can't sell it out, but. That's one. Oh, I thought the host had unmuted me. Hello. Thank you all for joining me for this virtual update from DC. And thank you for submitting such great questions. I'll try to address many of them in my remarks, and then we'll have a question portion later on. But first, let's go back to the beginning. How do we get here? Donald Trump and Republicans, well, they control the White House, the House, and the Senate. And the Republicans failed to pass any of the annual funding bills into law by September 30th. And that's what caused the government shutdown for 43 days. The shutdown in the House, though, House started earlier. 55 days ago, they jammed through their partisan continuing resolution, and then the Republicans left town for 55 days, rather than work with Democrats to address the Republican healthcare crisis. Republicans refused to negotiate. In the end, the Senate passed an agreement without any input from the full House of Representatives. And then yesterday, the House voted on a CR, a continuing resolution, along with 3 appropriation bills to fund a small part of the government for fiscal year 2026. Now, these bills fund the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and the legislative branch. These 3 appropriation bills, however, shortchange the American people. And here's why I voted no on them. The agriculture bill cuts nearly $15 billion to SNAP food assistance. That's right. The agriculture bill cuts nearly $15 billion to SNAP. And that is because it's going to be implementing the president's cuts to SNAP in his big, beautiful bill, which we know is a pretty big, ugly law. As we celebrated Veterans Day on Tuesday, congressional Republicans put forward a veterans bill that fails our veterans. Now, this bill underfunds the Toxic Exposure Fund created by the PAC Act. This fund helps victims of burn pits, Vietnam-era soldiers of Agent Orange and Navy too, and many more who deserve to get the care that they earned. But lastly, can you believe it? Senate Republicans secretly added language, and I mean, well, they thought they were going to keep it a secret, in the legislative branch bill that allows 8 Republican senators to sue the government and receive a minimum of $1 million each. That's a payout to 8 senators for what might have been possible involvement in January 6th. Now, I'm the only member of the Appropriations Committee from Minnesota in the House or the Senate. So hear me when I say these bills did not go through the right process. Senator Majority Leader Thune brought these bills to the Senate floor without a conference procedure with the House. So there was no final bipartisan agreement before the Republicans included them in the CR. Now, these 3 appropriation bills are a bad deal for Americans, and so is the continuing resolution. Now, I'm going to call the continuing resolution a CR from now on. Now, that does fund the government until January 30th. But if we don't pass the other 9 spending bills by January 30th, we'll be staring down another government shutdown. The CR fails to renew the Affordable Care Act, the ACA tax credits that 22 million Americans depend on, including 90,000 Minnesotans. And they depend on this for access to affordable health care. And it's very lovely that Senator Thune has made some promises that he will address the ACA tax credits later with a vote in the Senate. But what does that really mean? Senate Democrats were given no timeline, no guarantees that the Republican senators would give the Senate Democrats the 60 votes needed to extend these tax credits. Speaker Johnson has said in the past that he will not even hold such a vote on the floor. And there's no guarantee that President Trump would sign legislation to extend the tax credits, even if one reaches his desk to be signed. Now, President Trump could have intervened at any moment during the shutdown and simply told his party, his leadership, to extend the ACA tax credits, but he did not. I listened to the president speak last night as he was doing the bill signing, and it was clear that he will not work with Democrats to improve the ACA. Instead, he's telling Democrats to get on board with his plan to scrap the ACA completely and to force Americans to find their own health care coverage on their own. And make no mistake, they don't want to help lower the cost of health care. Republicans could have worked with us to improve the ACA or put forward their own plan to make healthcare more affordable. They could have focused on holding big pharma and insurance companies accountable for rising costs. But instead, they only tried to make the ACA less effective, all while making cuts to Medicaid and Medicare. Republicans have taken no action to protect or improve your health care. Due to their inaction, people will pay thousands more each year for less coverage. One of our neighbors, and I'm going to keep her name private because she asked me to, logged on to look at her plan, and she was shocked to see that her premium is set to increase from $204 a month to $614 a month. She can't afford this increase. And she told my office she now plans to delay and forego health care in order to be able to make ends meet. Why? Because like the rest of us, she's feeling the rising cost of groceries, car payments, heating bills, and more due to Trump's damaging economic policies. Now, let me take this as an opportunity to, well, not gently remind you, strongly remind you that open enrollment is in full swing for health insurance. And people all over Minnesota and the US are selecting their health care plans and making their first payment now. And if you're not careful, you could automatically re-enroll in a plan that you can't afford. Some will find themselves enrolling in plans that they can't afford, but that plan is going to provide less coverage at a higher cost. And then, unfortunately, some will choose, as my constituent that I mentioned earlier, to go without health care altogether because they simply can't afford it. And that's why I'm imploring every one of you, please look careful at your plan so that next year you don't automatically re-enroll in a plan that is more expensive due to Republican inaction. I also voted no for the CR because it doesn't stop President Trump from ignoring the law and carrying out his agenda by any means he feels necessary because of the CR's failure to include any guardrails, no guardrails at all. So the president will be able to continue his illegal and unconstitutional misuse of congressionally appropriated funds until we can win in court. And then Trump cruelly weaponized food, and he threatened federal employees. Even before the shutdown, President Trump and Elon Musk had fired 200,000 federal employees. Now, some of these employees felt forced to leave on their jobs because they thought they were next. And then, during the shutdown, the Trump administration threatened the livelihoods of 1.4 million federal workers, including air traffic controllers, who he threatened would lose their jobs and lose back pay. Like so many other federal employees, air traffic controllers missed 3 paychecks, and they still worked hard to keep our airspace safe. While this CR will provide relief to those workers, and the back pay they deserve. And I'm glad for that. In November, we all witnessed as President Trump weaponized hunger. For the last 13 days, the president has repeatedly violated appropriations law. Yes, he violated the law by refusing to pay SNAP benefits, jeopardizing access to nutrition for 440,000 Minnesotans. The U.S. Department of Agriculture had over $5 billion in a SNAP contingency fund to be used during emergencies, just like this government shutdown. It was illegal and immoral for President Trump to withhold even 1 penny of SNAP benefits. And remember that $6 a day in SNAP helps to provide nutritious food for the table of 26 million Americans. That's 16 million children, 8 million seniors, working parents, veterans, people with disabilities. Make no mistake, by not using the SNAP contingency fund, the president has violated the appropriation laws. So, hats off to Attorney General Keith Ellison and 20 other attorney generals and 3 governors who sued the Trump administration, and folks, they won. But that didn't satisfy the president. He still thinks he's above the law, and he's trying to appeal it. While millions of Americans have worried about how they'll put nutritious food on their table, as I said, Trump is going ahead to the Supreme Court in hopes that they will allow him to withhold SNAP funding. The passage of the CR does ensure that SNAP has regular funding, but the future of this program is still in the crosshairs of the Trump administration, as I mentioned earlier, with the cuts that were made in Trump's big, beautiful bill to SNAP. But we're all here as residents in Minnesota, and I'm so proud of Minnesota. We fought back. We fought back together. Throughout this manufactured Republican crisis, Minnesota has proven to be a light in the darkness. When Minnesotans couldn't rely on the federal government for SNAP, every level of government in Minnesota stepped in to help our neighbors in this emergency. Governor Walz provided from the state $4 million to food banks and food shelves. And I want to give a big shout out again to Attorney General Ellison, who sued the Trump administration for their illegal actions, and he won. But then there were the 86 Minnesota legislators who wrote the president directly, demanding that he release the November SNAP benefits. And then Ramsey County, $450,000 to food shelves. Washington County provided $250,000 to our food shelves. Like so many neighbors who donated to our food banks and food shelves to keep them stocked during this crisis, a big thank you to all of you who have supported our neighbors. Thank you for being this generous. It really means a lot. I've been to the food shelves and I've met with some of the administrators. Thank you. We've already talked about how the Republicans are refusing to extend the ACA tax credits, but let's not forget that President Trump and congressional Republicans have also made cuts to Medicaid and Medicare. But once again, we in Minnesota are fortunate that our state invests in healthcare in the way other states do not. State lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, I want to repeat that, on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, along with Governor Walz, implemented our state's reinsurance program, which has helped to stabilize the cost of health premiums. This program means that while Minnesotans will still see an increase in their premiums, it would have been a lot higher without this program. I am so proud to live in a state like Minnesota and represent the 4th Congressional District in Congress, a state that invests in the health of its residents and ensures that no child, no senior, no veteran, no hardworking parent goes hungry. So let's talk about what happens next. First, we'll have to see if the Senate does take up a vote on the ACA as it's promised, and if Speaker Johnson allows a vote on the House floor, if one comes over, or does the clock just run out on open enrollment before Congress can act? This was avoidable. Didn't have to happen. Republicans could have addressed the ACA credits ahead of the expiration, but they didn't. Republicans should have done their job on time by passing all 12 appropriation bills on schedule. Instead, we've wasted 43 days. We have set ourselves up for another potential shutdown the end of January. And I hope between now and January 30th, when the CR expires, Congress can get to work on passing the remaining 9 appropriation bills. That's going to be my focus. We must do this so we can avoid another shutdown and get to work on the immediate issues facing the American people. Know that I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get to work. And I don't like using the phrase get back to normal. Normal doesn't exist in this administration because of Elon Musk's destruction to the federal workforce through DOGE and President Trump's continually flouting the law. One other item that fills up the question box is Epstein, right? Yesterday, after waiting 50 days since their special election, the speaker swore in Congresswoman-elect Grijalva. Now, why did this take so long? It's because he knows the moment she was sworn in and she became the 218th person to sign the discharge petition, it forced a vote on the release of the Epstein files. Just yesterday, 2019 email exchanges between Epstein and Maxwell were released, and it shows new details about Trump's awareness of Epstein's disgusting crimes. We've all seen these emails, and if you're one of the few people who haven't, just turn on the news. Even the White House is talking about them. But notably, the White House did not say they were fake. Simply stated we cannot have one set of laws for the American people and a different set of rules for the rich and famous. Those who were engaged in Jeffrey Epstein's disgusting crimes must be held accountable for their actions. Now, we're going to get to the question and answer portion, but first, I'd like to address, one of many of the thoughtful questions you submitted. So I'm going to frame this up. I'm a former social studies teacher, and I have heard that we have a current events class from Highland Park Senior High, and they're listening in. And hats off to their fabulous teacher. And I'd like to begin with their question. So I'm going to hand this over to Luke, who's going to read this question and the other questions. Luke?
Okay, so the first question, what advice do you have for young people who feel so overwhelmed by the chaos of the news cycle that it's hard to stay informed and be civically engaged?
It is hard. It's hard for adults, but for young adults like you who are going to be our future leaders, we really need you to stay engaged. You might not be old enough to vote, but this is your country just as much as it's anyone else's. So first and foremost, as I pointed out, a social studies teacher, and you're in a classroom, you need to learn about government. You need to learn about the political process, and you need to find your place, how you're going to contribute in that as a citizen. Not everyone has to run for office to make a difference. There are so many ways to get involved and be one of the do-gooders. Just like I mentioned earlier with all the fabulous people who have been supporting our food shelves and food banks. But learn how to use the skills that you're developing in this class, to find news sources and journalists that are credible and reliable, and to question what you read, and to stay up to date on their reporting. And I do mean when I say credible and reliable, your generation is going to have to really learn how to sift out the BS and figure out what's fact. So buckle up and pay attention right now. And my advice to all of you who are feeling overwhelmed by the news, it's the same advice Mr. Rogers gave all of his viewers, me included when I used to watch it with my children. Look for the helpers. In bad times, there are always good people rising to the occasion to meet the moment. And if you can't find one, then just be one yourself.
For the second question, many people asked, do you support Chuck Schumer continuing to serve in his role as the Senate Minority Leader?
I get asked this question a lot. I'm a member of the House, so I don't have a vote on who the Senate Democrats elect as a leader. The Senate's going to have its own process to elect a new leader next Congress, and I do believe there will be a new leader. So that'll be up to Senator Klobuchar and our newest senator, who will be sworn in after the next election, to have a vote and make your wishes known.
All right. For our third question, a neighbor in St. Paul asks, what are your actions to protect historic properties in America and laws like the National Historic Preservation Act and NEPA? The destruction of the White House is very upsetting.
Protecting what belongs to all of us, our public lands, protecting our air and water, and then our history is important. And it's something, my other committee that I serve on here in Congress is the Interior Committee, which has preservations for our lands and also our historic treasures. And so I'm going to just take a moment and focus on historic preservation because last week, even now, the White House phone calls are still coming in. Let's be clear, the White House doesn't belong to any one president. It's our house. It's the people's house. It belongs to all of us. I strongly oppose what the president's doing, and I'm going to do everything in my power to try to protect our national historic properties and the people who tell our history at the Smithsonian, at the museums, and at the national parks. We must hold their standards high and hold this administration accountable when they try to weaken them. As I said, our office has heard from so many people in the 4th District about I'm just going to say it, they're disgusted about what the president did to the East Wing. This irony is not lost on me. President Trump bulldozed the historic East Wing to build a palatial ballroom that dwarfs the size of the White House. Then he gets in a jet, goes to Mar-a-Lago to hang out with his opulent, Great Gatsby themed party with his friends, the oligarchs. The irony can only be summed up in the words of F. Scott Fitzgerald, son of St. Paul, and I quote from The Great Gatsby. They smashed up things and creatures, then they retreated back to their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together and let other people clean up the messes they made. And unfortunately, Fitzgerald's words are true today, and we're going to be cleaning up a lot of messes the Trump administration has made.
All right. For our next question, it comes from Liz in St. Paul, and a lot of other people asked this as well. What can we do? Who do we contact to voice our concerns, especially living in a district where all of my representatives are against this bill and voted against it?
Well, the most powerful tool you have is your voice and then your vote. So continue to get together with friends and family, including those that live in Republican districts, and talk about the issues and use the facts. Contact members of Congress and your senators, make your voice heard. It's important that I hear from you too. Every call, every letter, every email counts. Like I said, even when your lawmaker agrees with you, because the press will call and say, are you hearing about this? What are your constituents thinking? Well, I can say I heard from you. And I can tell other Minnesotans that I serve with that I've heard from you and that they're not speaking for all of Minnesota. And for those few people who reach me from other corners of Minnesota, I can say, I think you heard from some of your constituents that you don't like what the president's doing in healthcare. And it's pretty quiet, the answers I get back from them. Be clear, this fight's not over. The fight for healthcare is not over. We're all going to keep fighting. We're not going to stop. And I know you're going to keep fighting too. So let's do it together. And Randall from Pine Springs, if you're listening, I read your question about keeping our democracy, and I have to give you a shout out. You had a very good comment, and I agree with you. Benjamin Franklin would have been very distraught, and that's why I'm so motivated to defend our democracy in Congress.
So Nina from Maplewood, and again, a lot of other people wrote in asking about a policy rider in the CR that would affect hemp-derived products. Can anything be done to save the hemp industry from this bill?
Well, She's right. The CR that passed yesterday included a poison pill policy rider that would ban the sale of intoxicating hemp-based products. Now, there are legislators who are trying to figure out right now what legislative changes might be possible or are possible in the future. This is authorizing language that happened, and it should not have been included in the CR, which is an appropriations bill. So an authorizing bill authorizes the money to be spent. The appropriations bill spends the money. We have to balance the book. We spend the money. I'm an appropriator. So I never have when I was chair, and I fight it as ranking member on the committees that I'm on, not to authorize on appropriation bills. The hemp products, well, it should have been debated in the Farm Bill, where industry leaders and members of Congress would have had a clear opportunity to weigh in. But this proves my point all along. And to the students who are listening, you heard the term be used even by the press, and the press that I respect that usually are very factful, about, well, what about this clean CR, this clean continuing resolution? A clean CR does not include extraneous things that are dropped into it. It's just forward funding the money that had been funded the year before. And this is just one of many policy riders that were inserted to the CR, like other bipartisan authorizations. Like, how about the special privileges for the insurrection that was taking place, and the Republicans who felt that they were wrongly targeted and now have voted to pay themselves up to $1 million.
For the next question, Jean in Arden Hills asks, how is Trump able to act, spend, and withhold appropriated spending without congressional approval?
Well, you're right. President Trump, Elon Musk, and Russ Vought, who's the head of OMB, the Office of Budget Management, they're all breaking the law. They're all stealing tax dollars from communities that were provided to make life better and improve an opportunity for our neighbors. And they're going around Congress to take this money. They've dispatched unelected and unaccountable political appointees to choke off investments. Democrats, we're doing everything in our power to hold this administration accountable. We're making phone calls to the administration, pointing out that they're breaking the law. We're writing letters. We're being vocal in the press. We're being vocal on social media. And when we can, we sign on to an amicus brief. An amicus brief is a brief that goes to the court. It's called Friends of the Court. And why this is important is I'm in the minority, and the Republicans won't join us to hold this administration accountable. They're turning a blind eye to what the Trump administration is doing. They'll tell me in private what he's doing is wrong and they wish he wouldn't do it, but they won't stand up to stop him. So we need Republican support. We need members from the other side of the aisle to join us, and we could stop this immediately. But that's not happening. So we need you to speak up, speak out, and be engaged.
Our final question comes from Richard from Woodbury. He asks, what plans for job training are you seeing or supporting for these times during rising automation and artificial intelligence?
That's a really good question, because that gets to the heart of change, and change is really hard, and it's very scary. I remember when American Hoist and Derrick closed down and left St. Paul. One of my dear friends, an elder neighbor up the street, all of a sudden found himself without work, near retirement, and without his health care. And so I know that a lot of these same fears are happening with the changes that are happening, especially with AI. But let me tell you what the president did. He proposed a cut in the Department of Labor by 35%. And House Republican bill cut billions of unemployment and training admission and eliminated it for young, youth, and adult job training. You know, the Job Corps, right by the state fair, their budget was cut in half. Our Job Corps closed down. Now, I've been a long supporter of alternative paths to careers. I'm a non-traditional student myself, The American workforce is changing, and we must invest job skills so that workers can adapt and find success. And that means job training for people in their 30s and 40s and 50s, and working with employers as they bring AI into their businesses to have the resources to train the existing employees into the new jobs that will be provided. But this needs to have Congress get to work, to have hold hearings, to work with the trade unions on many of the skilled trades that they have, to work with our community colleges for providing adult re-educational opportunities. And these have to be opportunities adults who are working right now and supporting a family can afford to take part in. There's a lot of work to do, and we need to do it. So thank you for your questions. If you submitted a question that was rather detailed or was casework, please know that we've received it and my staff will contact you if it's casework to follow up. And either way, we will get back to you with a note or an email, however you prefer to be replied to. I want to call your attention right now. I hope it's up on the screen. I can't see it. Is it up there, Luke? He turned his
I'm
microphone.
pulling it up right now.
All right. We have two QR codes on the screen here. The one to the right is MNsure's website. Open enrollment's begun and runs through January 15th. Take a look at it. For those of you in private insurance or looking at enhancing your Medicare benefits, be sure to look deep, check providers, check medicines, check all kinds of things before you sign up for anything again. And then for many of you, especially on the MNsure's website, I am so sorry, but brace yourself for sticker shock. The QR code on the left is linked to sign up for my newsletter, which goes out every Friday afternoon. Now, even if you signed up to watch us today, or you watch us later on YouTube, or see us on Facebook or other social media, I cannot enroll you in my newsletter. And that's a good thing. I think people should opt in on their social media. So I need you to sign up. My newsletter really is the best way to keep up with my work in Congress. And I challenged a couple of people to sign up for it. And you know, I hear the good and the bad with what I've done for the week. So please take a look and sign up if you can. I want to thank all of you who've attended. For those of you who want to share this virtual town hall with your family and friends later, it'll be uploaded on my website and YouTube channel and my social media accounts. If you have any questions or you need help with anything, you can contact my St. Paul office. The number is 651-224-9191, and we're open Monday through Friday during normal business hours from 9 to 5, and that's Central Standard Time. Or if it's more legislative that you want to talk about, please call my Washington, D.C. office at 202-225-6631. And we're open from 9 to 5 Eastern Standard Time. So thanks again for all of you joining this town hall. And it requires all of us to stay active and engaged and involved. Know that I'll continue to use my voice and my vote to defend our Minnesota values, to stand up to Donald Trump, fiercely oppose all the Republican efforts to deny you the services that you paid with your tax dollars and that you deserve to receive. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to go extend your well wishes and congratulations to Representative Grijalva, who's now no longer